Ari, how do you feel about beignets?
They're electric. It's a donut covered in powdered sugar.
Yeah, a lot of powdered sugar. Get ready to smash some because we're headed to New Orleans. Xfinity is bringing us the Big Easy to interview former Minnesota Vikings and Notre Dame star Kyle Rudolph and help everybody get ready for the last football game of the season before the long offseason begins.
The offseason just means more time for me to crush people in the college football video game, Andy.
Well, with Xfinity's fast and reliable internet service, you can run up the score with no issues. You'll have blazing fast speeds, ultra low lag, and that'll help you pile on the points. Plus, you can unlock faster Wi-Fi speeds at home or on the go with Wi-Fi PowerBoost only from Xfinity Mobile.
That's electric, dude.
Xfinity provides fast and reliable connections with lower lag so you can drop in without the fear of dropping out. Level up your gaming with a network that provides 99.9% reliability. And thanks to Xfinity, we'll be coming to you from New Orleans on Friday. Welcome. We're actually already in New Orleans. Beignets have been had, by me at least, not by Ari yet.
No, that's an unfortunate situation that we're going to have to change. But we are here in downtown New Orleans, and we were going to do a shot for this video that was the other way, which is the window looking out at some of the buildings downtown. So I'm looking squarely at the Caesars casino down there, and I'm just kind of visualizing my evening.
If you're wondering why Ari's twitching a little bit, that's why. But we are here. We're going to talk a little Super Bowl on Friday's show. We're going to talk a little New Orleans food on Friday's show. Maybe play a little beignet, boudin, or barbecue shrimp, something like that. You have some beignet takes.
I do. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a take. I just don't know why. Is it just the French word for funnel cake? Is that what it is?
It's not funnel cake. It's a density thing. We were actually going on the continuum of this because Ari was asking, like, where does it rank relative to fry bread, like Navajo fry bread that you would get out in Arizona? And I think on the density scale, like the lightest is funnel cake, then you have your beignet, and then you have your fry bread, which the fry bread actually I think is my favorite of the bunch. And I actually would love to see if we brought some fry bread to New Orleans and then dumped a bunch of powdered sugar on it. Does it hold up better to the powdered sugar?
Because put Dumont out of business.
Well, here's my thing. My unpopular beignet take, I don't need that much powdered sugar. I need a light dusting. I don't need a mountain of it.
Yeah, well, the best part is the fried carbs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm with you on that. And, I mean, they're absolutely delicious. But, like, I also, too, am a funnel cake person at a fair. Like, if I'm going to go to a fair or whatever, like, that's, like, what I would gravitate to, which is interesting because I'm not much of a sweets guy.
Right.
But it's also, depending on how you eat it, really not that sweet.
It's more savory if you leave most of the powdered sugar off, which I think I'm in your camp on that as well. Also, I'm a little traumatized. So early in my career, I was working for the Tampa Tribune, and I was in New Orleans for work for something. And I went to Cafe Du Monde and did a little work while I was at Cafe Du Monde. And I might have ruined my laptop with powdered sugar.
I can imagine.
It got into the keyboard, and it never quite worked the same way again. And boy, explaining that to the IT department was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you are probably one of the very few people who would destroy a laptop with powdered sugar, but I wouldn't put it past you. I'm happy that you're the person who did that. Yeah, like I have New Orleans takes, I have New Orleans foods takes, but I think we're going to save that for later.
Well, I think on Friday's show we can talk about that because I'm gonna take you for some very good New Orleans food that is not what people think of and is not not in the French Quarter. Like we'll go somewhere in the Warehouse District. It'll be nice. You'll like it.
Okay. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Cause like I'm not a gumbo jambalaya guy. So you know me, I'm just give me a burger and fries, but you know what? I'm excited. You always steer me in the right direction. So I can't wait to see what you have in store for later.
Ari, we got to argue a little bit today though. Our bosses decided that they were going to test us this week.
Yeah, it was annual throw Andy and Ari to the Wolves week because, not only do we have to do brackets looking into the future, which, by the way, I don't know if you saw, mine went up today.
Yeah.
We agree on the national champion. So I don't know.
And you were trying to decide if we were going to agree or not, but I think you and I have been pretty bullish on Texas. Oh, you steerish on Texas?
What's the you can stick your head up a bull's ass? And I don't know. But like, here's the actual honest truth. I did it without looking at your results.
Right.
Like, I didn't remember who your champion was. So as I was doing it, like, I tried my best to be as independently thinking as possible, and we wound up at the same place.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
my feeling is that Texas has done a good job recruiting. They've done a good job developing. It's not just about what they get out of the portal, and they've gotten to the Final Four the last 2 years. It's probably logical to think maybe
it's your whole knocking on the door thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
And like, listen, here's what put me over the edge. Last week, I did top 10 players returning to college football next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could make a legitimate case for 4 or 5 players on Texas's roster to be in the top 10 alone. Like, they have a lot of top end talent. I don't know what Ryan Wingo is going to be, but I've got high expectations from him, high expectations for Arch Manning. Obviously, you have Ant Hill and Colin Simmons. I mean, they've got a lot of dudes on that team. You know, there's some people to replace on the offensive line, obviously, but they have been a top 10, top 7, top 5 recruiting outfit for 5 years now. So.
They didn't go crazy in the portal on the offensive line either. Like, because that would be, to me, a sign of panic. Like, oh, we don't have what we need here. We got to go get somebody. But they didn't do that. It seems like they're very comfortable with what they have. And I think Kyle Flood's done a good job on the offensive line.
Like a recruiting class or 2 recruiting classes consecutively where they signed like 7 top.
Yes.
100. I mean, like, they have a lot of.
2022 and 2023 recruiting classes were very good for the offensive line for them.
So, yeah, I think that they're going to be in a good position. Obviously, we'll see how these rosters stack up. But, like, I think that if you're meeting a prediction that Texas will be next year's national champion with an eye roll, then you haven't been paying attention to the sport the last 2 years and what Sarkisian's done with that roster.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job, which actually brings us to the topic du jour.
Yes.
The other thing that our bosses had us do this week is our top 25 coaches list, which I thought was a very interesting exercise because I've always been at companies where somebody else did that list, where I was not the one assigned to do that.
You
list.
and I were at the same company where other people did that.
Yeah,
list.
yeah. And then before that, it was always somebody else. So I never looked at it that way. Never tried to break it down that way. I will say it is hard because a lot of, like, as you get into the 20s and, well, actually really the teens and the 20s, there's a lot of really good coaches there between 13 and 35.
Right.
That you would, like, you feel bad that you don't have them on your list.
Right.
But I think it's a good exercise just to sort of judge where everybody is because, I had a hard time. I don't know about you. How do you weigh what someone has done and has accomplished with what they're doing now? Like, Lincoln Riley was a struggle for me because obviously he was awesome for the first few years of his head coaching career, has not been awesome for the last couple of years. And you wonder, is he going to get it back?
Yeah. Also, too, like, I don't know how much you thought about this, but it's like I was a AD in my head for a lot of it, and it's like, who would you just want to hire?
Well, great.
And, like,
I have a great question about your list.
Yeah.
That leads with that question.
Well, I'm assuming that you're gonna bury me on a few, and I actually, like, look back at it, and there are, after putting it up and doing it, when you do it alone and you're not, like, bouncing ideas off of somebody else. Like, I think that you are prone to make mistakes. And I don't know if I could just, like, redo the list again, if I would change it. But, like, there are guys that I did not have on my list that I thought of and probably should have. And there are guys on the list who made it where if you, like, yell at me about it, I'm not going to have a big
I
defense.
have a just miss section that I still, there's still guys that I feel bad that I didn't have in the just miss section.
Yeah. And, like, that's the thing, too. And the reality of this exercise, too, is for the most part, I think that most people who do what we do would have some variation of the same top 10, right? I had one weird one in my top 10. We'll get to that, I'm assuming. But there's no possible way. Like, don't look at Twitter when your list goes up. Because all it is everybody mad at the same time.
Right.
Like, there's nobody that's like, hey, great list, man.
Yeah,
like,
they're not even, because even the ones who like where you put their coach probably don't like exactly where you put their coach. They
like,
want
if you put Kirby Smart and Ryan Day number 1 and 2, those fan bases are accustomed to that. So
right,
they don't even react to it. So, like,
whatever.
It's like, Kirby Smart's number 1. Like, there's no interaction with that. So all it is
spoiler alert, Kirby Smart number 1 on both our lists. Let's actually get into this with a little bit of news involving number 2 on both of our lists. So on Wednesday, Ohio State is promoting Brian Hartline, the receivers coach, probably the best receivers coach in America, promoting to offensive coordinator. Also, according to our own Pete Nakos at On3, the plan is to hire Virginia Tech offensive coordinator Tyler Bowen as the offensive line coach / run game coordinator, which would fill the roles that were required. Because remember, Justin Fry, the O-line coach, left for the Arizona Cardinals. Chip Kelly, the OC, left for the Las Vegas Raiders. So Hartline becomes the OC. Bowen becomes the run game coordinator / O-line coach. Now, what do we think this is? Do we think this is Ryan Day saying, hey, Brian Hartline, it's time to give you more responsibility. I would like you to call the offense. Do you think this is Ryan Day taking back play calling duties and saying, here's this nice title? Or do you think it's, hey, we're going to give Brian Hartline a shot? And oh, by the way, we've also hired somebody who is an experienced play caller in case we need that.
I think that I would be stunned if Ryan Day went back to calling plays. Like, I think this is, you've put in your time, you've had your results, you've recruited your ass off, you've had the best position group in America for 5 years now. Like, now's your time to call plays. Now, I do have my questions about, play calling and how good somebody in his position can be coming out of the gate. There's probably going to be growing pains. He's going to have to learn that. He's never done it. But, like, if there's any assistant in America that has worked somewhere and deserves a promotion, like, I feel like Ohio State was probably in a position where they're like, we have to give him a shot because we can't lose him. And like, that's a good place to be. So, like, I don't know. It would be insane to me if Ryan Day is like, you know what, I'm going to do this again. It's like you gave it up and won a national title. I think that's probably a pretty good indication that whatever he did
but
last year was
also, if
working,
things really go wrong, he can just pick it up and do it. We know he can call that offense and call it effectively. So if Ryan Day is worried, or if it just doesn't work, there's a solution there. But I think you're right. Ryan Day giving up the play calling probably made him a better CEO, better head coach in general, which we have him number 2 on this list. We would not have had him number 2 on the list this time last year. And I wonder, now that he's won the national...
What would he have been last year?
He would have been in the top 5, but we would have held the Michigan thing over him. I think we would have dinged him more for the Michigan thing then than we do now, because now he's won the national title. Like, Kirby Smart has an Alabama thing, but we're okay with that. Ryan Day has a Michigan thing, but he's won the national title, so it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, I didn't really even consider the Michigan thing anymore.
Yeah.
If they wouldn't have won the national title, he might not have even been my top 10 because of the Michigan thing. But you get enough equity in winning the national title where that doesn't.
Well, especially the way they won the national title.
Yeah, and the path that they took. Because, like, the number one thing too that you want to see, and I think that the Ohio State Michigan thing is a major cause of concern for people in Columbus. But the number one national talking point wasn't that he can't beat Michigan; it was that he couldn't win big games.
Right.
So for him to go out and win those 4 in a row in the postseason kind of puts to bed any of that. Like, that's the thing too. Like, as we get down to James Franklin and some of the other guys like Lane Kiffin, like, have they addressed the things that people neg them for? Like,
right.
And I had a hard time with that. So my balance, Andy, with Ryan Day was pretty simple. It's like, there are only how many active coaches are there with national titles now? Is it like 4, I think?
Well,
3?
We can make the list. Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, Dabo, Swinney. It's the top 3 on my list.
Yeah, that's it, right?
Yeah.
So,
because Mac's not coaching anymore.
And, like, that's the thing too. It's like, I didn't just go, did you win a national title? Put me in the top 3. Like, that's not how I did my list. But, like, also too, weighting it based on what you've done and what you're doing.
Right.
Very, very.
How you've adjusted to today's game. And we'll talk about Dabo in a little bit.
And then what about also what you've done as a coordinator? Like, I don't know if that ever played a factor for you, but I was like, Brent Venables made my list, and I'm assuming that's who you're going to come after me for.
No.
Everybody's upset about Brent Venables being on the list, but, like, Brent Venables is on my list because I think you could make the case that he's every bit as, like, a part of their national titles than as Dabo.
Let's stick to Ryan Day. Because
all right, yeah, let's stick to Ryan Day.
Because I think what you said just a minute ago was really interesting, and I hadn't thought about it that way. That the knock on Ryan Day was about the Michigan thing, yes, but was more about him winning big games. Because the way the schedule used to work, the Michigan game and the Penn State game were the big games.
Yeah.
And then there might have been one more as you got to the playoff. And, like, the Peach Bowl, that was a big game that they barely lost. If they'd won that game, they probably would have had he probably had 2 national titles now. So they had to win 4 big games in a row. Like, they did not get any easy draw at all in this playoff. It was the hardest possible path, and they won 4 in a row. And I think the way they won this one completely changes our view of Ryan Day.
Yeah, well, the thing too is, like, the Michigan and the big game thing, like you said, were the same thing. Well, the thing that you said that was interesting, Andy, about the Ohio State-Michigan thing was that Ohio State playing Michigan was the big game.
Right.
Right. Like if you lose the Michigan game, like Ohio State fans
they
are
were playing
freaking out.
2-game seasons because of the way the Big Ten schedule worked.
And like Ohio State's game against Michigan last year, not this past year, the year before, when the Connor Stallion stuff was happening and Sharon Moore was coaching, was one of the, 3 most hyped Ohio State-Michigan games ever. Like when you think about all
and one of the most embarrassing for the loser.
So like those two were kind of the same, but like you do look back at the 2019 Fiesta Bowl. I think that was one of Ohio State's best teams in program history, and they lost to Clemson.
Right. To another guy that's very high on our list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, they had been coming up short pretty consistently in their biggest games, losing to Oregon twice. So for them to actually get that burden off their shoulders and do what they did in the playoff, I think changes your entire brain chemistry. And I've got the theory too.
Yeah.
My theory with Ryan Day is that because he went on this run, I don't think he's going to be as tight for the Michigan game moving forward.
He shouldn't
now that
be.
he has the equity, like I don't think he has to crap his pants anymore. Like it's like they're going to go into it. They're not. Michigan isn't anything that they didn't just beat or conquer. And Michigan's going to be very good next year, and there's probably a likelihood, or at least a coin flip that they do go to Ann Arbor next year and lose again. But that might just be because Michigan's awesome again. So like, I don't know. National championships right a lot of wrongs. Winning rights a lot of wrongs. And like I think that the conversation about Ryan Day and whether he was fit to be Ohio State's coach 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago were rational and warranted. I really do. I don't like look back at it and go, well, look, he won the national title. If you were questioning him, you're an asshole. Like that's not true. Like I think at the time, with the information that we had, with the most embarrassing loss in Ohio State history, potentially one of the top 5 most embarrassing losses, the playoff hadn't happened yet. That's all the information you had. But like now, he to his credit, flipped the narrative.
Well, he's also done something no coach has ever done. Like no coach has run that gauntlet before. And it may be that the national champ in this system does that every year. Like for whatever reason, the team with the hardest path goes there. But I doubt that's what's going to happen. I imagine some of the teams that get a little bit easier path might go through and win. This just so happened in the first year of this, the team with the absolute most difficult path went through it and actually went through it in a pretty dominant fashion.
Well, I think there's a lot of like galaxy brain mental gymnastics you can do with this, Andy. But like the Ohio State that showed up in the playoff is the Ohio State that I anticipated all year. You know how I've been talking about them. They're a super team and all this stuff. And because they were so underwhelming during the regular season and never hit that peak, it almost turned their postseason run into some sort of surprise. But if that Ohio State team would have just existed, which would have completely eradicated any discussion about whether or not he's fit to be their coach to begin with, they would have been 8-point favorites in every game they played and just beat the crap out of everybody they played. It's like, I think the perception of what they did now as a result of coming up short against Michigan and playing like crap against Nebraska and losing to Oregon early in the year looks more remarkable than it probably actually was. And that's what makes him, to me, like doing this list 4 years ago was so different because I would just go look at what your recruiting results were.
Right. And it's not like that
anymore. But Ryan Day, without question, unequivocally, is one of the 3 best roster builders in America.
Well, and I think, I wrote about this at the beginning of the season, and I'm curious to see how this plays out because I said Ryan Day strikes me as the kind of person who will be able to retain better rosters, not just because of Ohio State's finances, because everybody has money at the top, but because of who he is and because of the way he coaches. He's a pretty normal dude. And you saw
he even looks normal in all these like late night television appearances he's making.
But you saw Jack Sawyer in the way that he talked about him. You saw Will Howard. You saw Donovan Jackson. The way those guys talked about Ryan Day, they love him. They absolutely love. This is not a case like he doesn't rule by fear, which that worked before because you had to sit out a year if you transferred. Like you can't do that anymore. Now, when you have players the quality of Ohio State's players, they can just go somewhere else, play right away, make a ton of money. Like you better give them a reason to stay. And I think Ryan Day is actually built for that generation more so than some of the dominant coaches of the past.
Yeah. Well, also too, like if you look at where Ohio State is, as a program, they are as equipped, if not more equipped than every other team in college football to continue sustained success. So it's like they're going to lose a lot of guys this year, and they lost some coaches. They're going to maybe have some growing pains next year. But when it comes to NIL and the way that they've recruited, out of high school, like they are sustained. They are
well,
built
and
for
now
sustained success.
comes the hard part, the part that Nick Saban made look easy and kind of spoiled it for everybody else. When you do have both your coordinators leave after a national title run, like Saban did that and kept replacing people and kept figuring out how to win national titles. That's not that easy. Like Kirby Smart lost Dan Lanning. He made Glenn Schumann the defensive coordinator. They won another national title. Like that part's pretty hard. So,
but you know what's nuts? Like if Ohio State would have beaten Georgia, and I know the if game a few years ago, or if Ohio State wins another national title in the next 2 years,
Day's number one on the list.
You might have a new king of the sport, which in Kirby Smart 12 months ago was the unequivocal number one. I still think he is.
Yeah,
I don't think either of us. But like Day is a Michigan win away and a deep playoff run next year away from potentially being number one on this list.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, 3 months ago I might have had him at like 14. Okay, so like that, but like also it's a testament to how much winning cures things. Now, here's another theory that I have about Ryan Day, and then as it pertains to the rest of the list too.
Right. Okay.
We work it on 3.
We do.
Our website does a very good job, especially Pete Nakos, in helping people understand NIL and the transfer portal.
Yes.
And it's a very essential piece to building a roster. I think it has gotten a lot of attention, and rightfully so, and it should continue to get attention. But I think that part of that attention has also made people forget how important high school recruiting is.
It's still the most important thing.
And I really think that this next year, and this is in my playoff bracket when we get to it, you're going to see a lot of the teams that I have making it and going deep into this tournament are teams that recruit really well out of high school, because I think we're going to have a regression back to which rosters are built the best.
I don't think we ever had a progression.
Yeah.
I think it's still
Florida State 2 years ago was a progression.
I guess so. That's
there were certain teams like Michigan State when Mel Tucker had
Kenneth Walker,
like that. Like there were certain players that were transcendent at their new places. There were certain teams,
but
that
those
were much
teams
better.
didn't win it all. Like the teams that were in the mix to win it all were always the ones.
Because even Michigan last year, they had some important pieces that they brought in, but the best players on their team were all high school recruits that they developed.
Right.
So,
they plugged in about 3 key transfers. They had a left tackle, a center, and an edge rusher. Everybody else were guys that they brought in from high school.
I do wonder, like, if we go into the future 5, 6, 7 years from now, and we look back at the next 6 champions, if they're all going to be the same teams that are recruiting well. And the thing that I think is interesting is that teams go up and down in the rankings, but like there isn't that much difference in the recruiting ranking.
Well, I think there's room for a Michigan that wasn't recruiting at a top 5 every year kind of level.
I also think that was a fallacy, because all of the Michigan's best players on that team were 5-star prospects. Like they didn't recruit the same. They didn't recruit,
Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant were not.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, like Will Johnson and
Donovan Edwards, JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of really good players. They did a good job of doing a balance of it. But I would have said 3 years ago too, Andy, that roster was impossible.
I think that opens it up for, say, a South Carolina, which does the top end talent, the Dylan Stewarts, the Josiah Washingtons, and also recruits well, evaluates well, and develops. So it's gonna be fun to watch. But Ryan Day, I think, is good at all of this stuff, and that's why we have him at number 2. Kirby Smart is probably the best at all of this stuff, and that's why he's at number 1. Let us move down the list. I want to go in your top 10. Well, I'll just go to the guy. I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
we're on YouTube.
I didn't know what to do.
So you put Deion Sanders number 7. Now I didn't leave Deion Sanders off my list. I put him at number 21, and I had what I thought were very good reasons for him to be at 21 and not higher and not lower. My thing with Deion is the first year at Colorado was not very good, but he learned from that, grew, changed. But also they didn't win the league despite having the 2 best players in the league. And so that's a bit of a problem, but I still suspect they will have the most top-end talent in the Big 12. And you can say, well, okay, that makes it easier for Deion. No, that's the superpower. That's what we just got through talking about with Ryan Day and Kirby Smart, about how they get top-end talent and put it together. Deion Sanders is more capable of getting top-end talent than any other coach in the Big 12. So I suspect he'll move up my list. I think you have him a little high, and I want to compare him to another person on the list because this is another one you got crushed for where you put him. You have James Franklin at number 15. Ari, you're the AD of a program that has lots of money, that's in the Big Ten or the SEC, that on the right year can compete for a national title, that recruits well, recruits in the top 10 year after year, or recruits, top 15 year after year. Two candidates are willing to take your job, James Franklin or Deion Sanders. Who are you hiring?
You texted me this question, and it wasn't as specific, but you said, who are you hiring, Deion or James? And I responded with what I still think is my answer. It just depends on where.
Okay.
I think that James Franklin would
Georgia. James Franklin. Auburn. James Franklin. Michigan. James Franklin. Ohio State. James Franklin. Penn State. Obviously, James Franklin.
Yeah. I guess. The problem that I have with James Franklin.
James Franklin, by the way, if we want to go the other way, if we want to go to schools that don't traditionally win, because Deion did a really good job this year. They won 9 games. James Franklin won 9 games in 2 different years at Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem I have with James Franklin, and maybe this is just recency bias, is that he has been a coach who has routinely lost every important game that his team has played for like 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a long time. Like, it's not like, oh, okay, you're giving him crap because they haven't gotten over the hump the last few. Like, this is like, what was the stat? Like, he's like 2-20 against top 10 opponents or something. Like, it is insane.
So the same problem we had with Ryan Day until just a month
except
ago.
Ryan Day's problem didn't span almost a decade. So like that, like there's a, at a certain point you got to do it, right? And like, I guess like if you think that James Franklin is a better coach than Deion Sanders, like I have a hard time like in this scenario being like, oh, you're unequivocally wrong. The thing that I will say is that I think that Deion Sanders possesses the ability to do something that not a lot of other people can do.
I agree.
And
but
that's
I just
why
don't think he's a better coach than James Franklin right now. I think Deion Sanders will move up my list because, again, he is.
But James Franklin is probably viewed as a disappointment by a large portion of his fans.
Yeah, because the job's really hard.
Yeah, I mean,
Deion won less games than James Franklin this year.
It's like on one hand,
do you think Penn State fans would be excited about that?
See, I think that like that. Well, no, but it's a completely different.
Is it
a completely different place and circumstance?
Okay, put James Franklin at Colorado. Would James Franklin have Colorado winning?
Year 2 was on the cusp of making the playoff, dude.
Like, yeah, because of the system. Would James Franklin in this system have Colorado and competing for the Big 12? Of course he would.
Here's the long and short of it. I believe that Deion Sanders possesses an ability that very few other other coaches possess.
Very few. I agree with you.
And that's the reason. And not on top of that, I think that Deion Sanders also did an incredible job learning from mistakes, hiring coordinators, getting players to buy in. Like the coaching aspect of it, I thought was because I thought that Colorado was a very well coached team.
And that's why he's on the list for me, and so not on the list.
Like, and if you think that I went too high, like I'm not going to be like, oh God, you're an idiot for thinking that.
Yeah, you went way too high. He belongs on the list because of the growth from year 1 to year 2 at Colorado, because of his ability to get elite talent to Colorado. Like those are really good things. I just thought this is wild. You have him 8 spots ahead of James Franklin.
Yeah, but I also too wonder too, like if you did the same test with your list that you did with mine.
Sure, let's do it. Go for it.
Like, is every single of the 20, because you had Deion at 21.
I did.
Is every single coach ahead of him an unequivocal, yes, I'm hiring him at Georgia over Deion? Is that how you did your list?
No, not necessarily. No, not necessarily.
So then why did you do that to me?
Because it's more fun to do it to you.
Oh, okay.
Because
I'm like, would you hire Lincoln Riley or Deion right now?
Deion. Because it's more fun when I win. No,
do you see what I'm saying, though?
No, I do.
Like, James Franklin has been at a high-pressure job. He has created a program that wins 10 games every single year, no matter what. So from a safety standpoint, putting him into Georgia is a much more
most of these guys I would, because they have won.
Well, don't look at the top 10. Look at the
I'm looking at like Kyle Whittingham, Matt Campbell, Lance Leipold.
Do you hire Sherrone Moore over him right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Before the Ohio State game, no. But
Matt Campbell at Georgia over him?
yes. I'd hire Matt Campbell anywhere.
Kenny Dillingham at Georgia over Deion?
Yes. Kenny Dillingham.
So then it sounds like
Kenny Dillingham won the league that
Lincoln
Deion coaches
Riley?
in. Now I'm rethinking where I put Lincoln Riley. This is more me rethinking where I put Lincoln Riley than where I put Deion.
Because here's the thing, too, and it might be the case, but if we go through your top 25 list, is every single person that's ranked behind coaches somebody you would not hire over coaches that are ranked ahead of them? Like, is it
Right.
always, is that just like is that what
like you say? It's almost always job dependent, but that is basically where you're at. I mean, that's you got to rank them somehow.
Yeah, and it's like if you're going to go hire a coach for a middle tier Big Ten or SEC team that has a national championship ceiling, are you going to hire Brian Kelly or are you going to hire Sharon Moore?
Yeah,
like even though Brian Kelly has a longer pathway of being successful, he might not be the best.
I mean, right
hire.
now
I
I'd
don't know if
probably
that's-
hire Brian Kelly. So, let's
Would you hire Brett Bielema at Georgia or Deion Sanders?
Deion Sanders. I want elite talent.
And Brett Bielema
Because we've
already
seen-
went to the SEC.
We've seen
and
Brett
didn't
Bielema
go
in the
well.
SEC.
But
Yeah,
Brett Bielema's 8 spots ahead of him. So like that's not the right way to look at it.
that's true.
I
Well,
also it's like
I guess-
also
I
giving
guess
the
if
man
we're talking-
flowers for turning around an absolute dumpster fire
oh no,
program that like was hopeless and like
I
had
thought
to go
putting him on the list does that. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had to put him in the top 10 to do that.
So the thing that I do regret, and it's not, you're not going to get me in like a gotcha moment, but like, would I hire Deion at Bama over DeBoer or Heupel or something? Probably, probably not. Like,
Probably not.
You know, but that doesn't mean. But I still think that Deion Sanders has done a better job at Colorado than Kalen
Now
DeBoer has done at Alabama so far.
Here's the thing, because Deion is younger in his coaching career than almost all of these people. If he shows the same kind of growth this year that he showed last year, then you might say yes to that.
And if Colorado stinks this year because they don't have Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders anymore, then I'll look like an
then
idiot.
you'll have it.
But like
you'll have
that's
your
fine.
answer. But
Yeah,
I suspect he's going to be okay. I don't know that they're going to be dominant, but I think they still are capable of getting talent that the rest of the Big 12 might not be able to get in some spots. And I think that's going to help him.
and he's without question. And like on your list, Kenny Dillingham's a spot ahead of him.
Right, because he won the league that Deion coaches
right.
in.
Deion Sanders probably has a better long-term ability to get the best players to come to his school in that
But I'll
conference.
tell you exactly why I had Kenny Dillingham ahead of him.
Okay.
Kenny Dillingham inherited just as big of a dumpster fire as Deion did.
Yeah.
That- Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were in trouble.
Yeah, the Herm Edwards, the Antonio Pierce stuff, like everybody was leaving. It was an absolute mess.
Well, here's the thing with Kenny. And you know,
Yeah.
I'm a Kenny guy.
Yeah.
Kenny is perfect for ASU. He was like born to be ASU's coach.
I think that works in a lot of places, though. What he does works in a lot of places. He happens to be home, but what he does would work in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And but that's okay. I don't want to shortchange Deion there. What Deion does works everywhere.
The question that we don't have, or the answer that we
Actually,
don't have.
what Deion does works everywhere, because if you put Deion at Kansas, he'll get better players than Kansas can usually get.
The question I have is, does Deion work at Georgia?
I think so.
Because like then why would you
'Cause-
hire anyone else
Because he's
over him?
he's got money to hire whatever assistants he wants at that point.
And you want to talk about acquiring talent? Like, why would you hire Chris Kleiman over him
Yeah.
at Georgia from that standpoint?
Yeah. No.
Like, I question.
Maybe
whether,
I'm wrong. Maybe you talk me into it.
But like, I also feel like Deion rescuing a dumpster fire is a hell of a lot different than going to a place that wants to win a national title every year.
Right. Because improvement, while nice, isn't good. It goes back to the James Franklin thing.
And it also goes back
James
to
Franklin won how many games this year, and people were still pissed at him?
I don't know if people were pissed at him this year, were they?
I think they were pissed about the way that the Orange Bowl ended.
Yeah.
But yes, he was one game from the national title game, and people were still pissed. So
Yeah, but Deion Sanders is an interesting, because there are two people on my list that are very hard to rank. I ranked Deion pretty high, and I ranked Bill Belichick somewhere, and we can get to that here
yes,
after the
we
break,
do need to talk about Bill Belichick. But first, I want to talk about Huel. This is the Huel Black Edition. 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, 7 grams of fiber. This is a complete meal in a bottle. It is the way to go when you are busy, when you can't cook, when you can't shop, when you have got to find a way to get a meal in you that gives you everything you need. Huel is the best way to do it. Go to Huel.com, Huel.com. Use the code Staples15 to get 15% off your order and a free gift. Try Huel today. My kids love it. My wife loves it. She'll grab one and take it for lunch. I'll grab one and do it for breakfast. If I can't cook, my son will hit one before he goes to school. It is the best way to get a complete meal very quickly. Huel.com, Huel.com. Use the code Staples15 to get 15% off your first order. Let us talk about Bill Belichick, because I struggled with this one, and eventually I think I punted. I know I punted. I didn't put him on my list. You had him at number 21 on your list. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't know where to put him because I've never seen him coach college football before. And coaching the NFL, and while college football is coming closer to the NFL, coaching the NFL and coaching college football are two different things. And yes, he's the best coach ever in the NFL and possibly the best football coach ever, like the best coach in the history of the sport. Does that mean he's going to be an effective college football coach? I don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, you not putting him on the list is just like, okay, well, we haven't seen him yet.
That's not applicable as opposed to I don't think he belongs.
It's called the bitch way out.
Yeah, okay.
What you did.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, what you did is probably the right thing. Because me putting him on that list took a spot away from somebody that probably should have been on it. That makes people mad. That said,
it's Bill freaking Belichick.
I think you can make the case that he's the greatest football coach that's ever walked the planet.
Yes.
So, like, if that's the case.
Well, I wrote about this in my intro to my top 25. Because, you know, when Charlie Weiss got to Notre Dame, he talked about having a decided schematic advantage and everybody made fun of him. Like, Bill Belichick gave them the decided schematic advantage that got Charlie Weiss the Notre Dame job. Like, it was because of Bill Belichick.
It's like, if anything that, like, if you, like, here's the thing. Because, like, Bruce Feldman always has, like, James Franklin in his top 5 every year because he always goes back to the Vanderbilt thing, right?
I'm still very impressed by the Vanderbilt thing, too, if you hadn't noticed.
But if you're going to give him equity, James Franklin for Vanderbilt, which happened, what, 12 years ago?
It was a long time ago, yeah.
Where does 6 Super Bowls win? like, does that, like, count?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I mean, like, I don't know. Like, that. So, like, to me, it's like, I put him in the 20s because I haven't seen him coach yet.
Yep.
But it felt bizarre that a 6 Super Bowl winning champion was not on
But
the list.
and that's
So,
the
like,
other thing.
it's
Like, you've got him in the 20s. Like,
yeah,
you
you
got him
either
below
put him
Lance,
number 1 or not at all.
I love Lance Leipold, but I'm sure Lance Leipold looked at that list as like, why am I above Bill Belichick?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, like, here's the way I hide behind that is just because you're a great football coach doesn't mean you're a great college coach.
I think
so. We still
does
have
Lance
to wait.
Leipold have as many national titles? Did he win 5 or 6 at Wisconsin
I
Whitewater?
think he won 5.
Okay. So, but it is tough. It really
It's
is.
kind of funny to think though. It's like if you either put him number 1 or not on the list at all. Like
Right.
21. But like the reason why I do it is respect for the past,
Right.
cautiously optimistic about the future.
Uh-huh.
But if you're going to give people equity for previous accomplishments, you can't completely ignore what he's done.
I agree.
And so that's where
I
it
agree.
landed. So
And I don't know what he's going to be. We talked about this a little
would
bit.
you hire him at Georgia over any? Like, you want to do the Georgia test with Bill Belichick?
I don't know about his talent acquisition.
Yeah.
That's and now he'll tell you, and Michael Lombardi, his general manager, will tell you, because I've heard Lombardi talk about this on McAfee's show. They feel like the college game is pushed so much closer to what the NFL is in terms of talent acquisition that you do not have to be the Kirby Smart level of recruiter to get that level of player anymore if you're at a place that has the resources. I don't know if that's true or not. Like, we're going to find that out. We're going to find that out as Belichick works, as some of these other schools that are pouring resources in to try to even the playing field with the Georgias and the Ohio States. Like, we are going to find that out, how much that matters and how much the recruiting people out of high school and being able to get the top end high school talent still matters.
Yeah. You know what I think like the most likely outcome is? That he just like goes 8-4 like 5 years in a row, or if he's there that long, and then that's it. Like, I mean, like, because it's like that. If you go 8-4, 9-3 for 4 or 5 years there, I think that's probably a sign that you've done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, too, it's just like winning a national title is just really, really hard. And he's not equipped to do the college thing. Like, I don't know.
Well, and North Carolina does not have the resources that the schools that expect to win national titles.
Like, we do talk a lot about like discount, right? Like,
although look at
NIL
this,
discount.
look at this schedule, Ari. Look at this schedule. I don't know, man.
Actually, when I was doing my playoff bracket, like gave it.
You thought about it, yeah. They play Clemson,
but I think people would have thought I was trolling.
They play Duke.
I don't
they play
want
Duke.
people to think I'm trolling.
They've struggled with NC State of late. So all of these things.
Here's the problem with the schedule: if they lose to Clemson, they've got no equity.
Right. And what if? Because we don't know what TCU is going to be. You know, TCU kind of fell off the map after going to the national title game a few years ago, but they actually finished the season strong this year. Sonny Dykes is not suddenly a terrible coach. Like, if he goes in and beats Belichick week 1, like,
that's going to be a hell of a game.
It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. So that's my Bill Belichick thing. But it's like, if you want to go drop Deion 10 spots, whatever, that's fine. Like, I maybe I overdid it, but I just thought that the job that he has done and like, that's the other thing too. There are good seasons and there's construction. Like, those are two different things.
Yeah.
And like, I think that the construction, although I do have some criticisms for him, and as you've heard 800 times, I don't think that you could make a case that he hasn't constructed that program in a way that makes them completely different than they were before, which was a unique talent.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's talk about another person on this list who I struggled with, and I think you probably did too. And it is a matter of balancing the past with the present, and that's Lincoln Riley, because Lincoln Riley would have been in a top 5 on both of our lists the year he took the USC job.
Oh yeah, maybe number 3 or something. Well, no, Saban would have been on that list too,
right?
And
Harbaugh was there, was still coaching. But Lincoln Riley has made a pretty precipitous fall, and he's trying to do some stuff now. Like, they've hired the GM away from Notre Dame. They hired another front office type person away from Wisconsin. Like, they're trying to make moves now to help their talent acquisition. And I think that it actually gets back to what we've talked about, is that Lincoln Riley has never been good enough at the talent acquisition at a high school piece.
Yeah. And like, part of that too was like bizarre, because he was at a place that was near the most talent dense state in the entire country that has a great footing. Like, Oklahoma and Texas is like basically an in-state thing. And they've done a pretty good job, but like, the reason why Lincoln Riley was on my list to begin with is the same he's on your list. The Big 12 championships and the Heisman winners happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
and the thing is, like, you felt like you were guaranteed that he would have a dominant quarterback every single year.
Yeah. But what USC is in relation to what I thought it was going to be it's not even. It's not even in the same galaxy of what I thought it was going to be.
And it goes back to, and he doesn't, he bristles at these questions, but the actions tell a different story. Like, as soon as it became clear Oklahoma was going to the SEC, he wanted out. He didn't want any part of having to deal with Alabama and Georgia and Texas. Well, Texas he was going to deal with them anyway.
That's a conspiracy theory.
That is not a conspiracy theory.
It is.
His actions on the recruiting trail told you he was not willing to swim in that shark tank.
Is it possible that he just wanted to swim in the Pacific Ocean?
It's
it's
I don't possible, know. But the thing is, he goes to the Big Ten, which I'm assuming USC informed him that they were moving or thinking about moving when he took the job. But the Big Ten's just as much of a shark tank now. And again, he's never shown that he's capable of getting the kind of top-end talent, especially along the line of scrimmage, that you have to compete for national titles. Now, maybe that will be different with this revamped personnel staff. But until we see it, I don't believe it.
Well, here's the other problem, too, is that what year is he going into? Is this year 4 now at USC?
This is year 4 at USC.
They're not going to be that good this year. So you're going to be going into year 5. Like, they're not going to the playoff this year. Okay.
We don't
so even
think,
if they go,
who knows?
4, you never know. I don't know. My thought process is that they're not going.
Well, right. Their best returning offensive lineman is now starting at Oregon.
So then you're going to be going into year 5, which is a half a decade of like, who's the quarterback? And I mean, I don't know. maybe Longstreet's going to come in and just be an amazing all-world player.
Yeah.
It's very hard to predict the future. But if you go to year 5, having not won anything, that's a long time, Andy, especially in this new world. So, respect for the Heismans for sure. But
and the Big 12 titles.
If they lose 4 or 5 games this year, though, and we do this list again next year,
he's not going to be on it.
He's not going to be on it.
Yeah.
So
and that's the thing. It becomes the Bill Parcells thing after a while. You are what your record says you are. And like the thing with Lincoln Riley is he came on like gangbusters, and the Oklahoma fans will say, "Oh, Bob Stoops set him up." It's not all because of Bob Stoops. Like Lincoln Riley had it rolling at Oklahoma.
Even in the most sturdy scenarios, how many years do you think a coach can set up the incumbent for?
2 at the most,
right?
Yeah.
Like 4 is a long. He won 4 in a row, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
and they were good the last year. They weren't good enough to win the title, but they were still good that last year.
Jalen Hurts was the Heisman finalist too, wasn't he? A runner-up.
Yeah, they won the league that year.
So I mean, like he was the architect of bringing in some pretty important players. Oklahoma fans.
Yeah, he recruited Caleb Williams to Oklahoma and then to USC.
Yeah.
So again, it's not. I'm not completely destroying his recruiting because he was great at
recruit the right position
at recruiting quarterback. But you got to recruit the big guys better.
But I'm completely out on him now.
I know you are, and I'm not. It's funny because I've been very critical all along, but I'm the one who won't give up on him yet because he's 41 years old. Like he's too smart. I don't want to believe that he's not going to ever figure it out.
I just kind of feel like I was with you on that, but I feel like enough time has passed at USC where it's like it should have been fixed already.
Yeah.
And I know that you can be like, they got a better defense this past year. But it's like we're going into year
right. It's
4
it's an incremental improvement. You need to see him bring in classes like Ryan Day brings in. And like
was USC better this year than they were the year before? They were, right? A little bit better.
It's hard to say.
Their defense was better, but the team overall wasn't.
Yeah, they lost a lot of close games. The USC team the year before. Now the USC team the year before played in the Pac-12, but the Pac-12 the last year of the Pac-12 was actually a pretty tough league.
Yeah, they also had Caleb that year.
Yeah, and they had Caleb Williams.
But I feel like their team has gotten incrementally worse.
I think that's a fair statement. Like his first USC team was his best one, second was the second best, third was the third best. It's not a good trend line.
And the second one was bad because of its defense, but it still had a chance in every game it was in because it had one of the best players. So, the thing too is like, if USC comes into this year and doesn't have a dynamic quarterback, it's like, well, if you're not even going to do the thing that you're promised to do, which is to deliver an amazing quarterback and exciting offense that's going to put up points against everybody, then what do you have left?
Right.
Because you're not a defensive coach. You're not Mario Cristobal, another player or coach that I have on my list pretty high in terms of like building the trenches. So that's the thing too. It's like Antonio Morales said this. He's the athletic USC writer. That I think it's true. It's like, what is USC's identity as a program?
And what are they supposed to be?
Who are they supposed to be?
Like you hired Lincoln Riley to win national titles. You didn't hire Lincoln Riley to be okay.
And it's like, this is going to sound so shitty, and I'm sorry. But like, why? Like, is it okay that Miller Moss was their quarterback in year 3? Like, is that okay?
It would have been okay if he'd have been good.
He wasn't.
Right. So that's on Lincoln Riley.
And you would think that if you have 2 years
to figure that out, because you knew when Caleb was leaving. Yeah, I know. It is the
fact that he had 2 full years there to know who the replacement was, and they didn't bring anyone in.
It's just frustrating to me, Ari, because I know he knows what he's doing, and I think he knows what the problems are. But
is it possible that he got so fixated on fixing the defense that he laxed a little bit on the offensive side?
It's not that, because it's defense and offense. They're not good at recruiting top end talent in the trenches. They're not good at it. Like, and they say, well, we got the best O-line and D-line coach in the country. Well, you don't, because those guys coach at places where they have good offensive and defensive lines. But you also don't get the level of talent required to have the best offensive and defensive lines in the country.
Thing too. There's no offensive linemen in California.
Right. Too many skinny people. Too many salads.
Too many longboarding down the beach.
Too many salads. Damn it.
Too many trips to Erewhon.
So I don't know. It's not the easiest thing in the world. Like, if it were so easy, everybody would do it. But the man gets paid $11 million, so he should do it.
But he should be in Texas and Georgia. And like, I also like give him crap for going to Georgia. It's like, oh, you can keep getting all these 5-star commitments out of the
and
state
you know
of
they're
Georgia,
going to leave.
and you're just
You know they're not
flip
going to
to
actually
Georgia
come.
at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, but like, you have to
maybe get him committed closer to the time they actually sign.
maybe like going to Ohio and
Change
Pennsylvania,
change your timing on that.
Indiana, like those the Rust Belt, and get some real dogs, to come in there. I don't know what but like the thing is I don't know what USC is right now.
Yeah.
So, and he's still on the list because he's living off of the past, and like there's nothing exciting about the present.
So one more coach, and you and I differed quite a bit on this guy. I had him at number 8. You had him at number 16. It's Brian Kelly, and I think we're actually kind of in the same place on him, even though we had him in different places on our list. Where Brian Kelly is a good coach. He has won everywhere he's been: Grand Valley State, Central Michigan, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. Now at LSU, he's won
there?
10 and 9 games.
Is that winning at LSU?
That's the problem.
Okay, I don't know. Like,
That's what I was. I walked you right into it.
9 wins.
I walked you right into it.
He's won everywhere he's been except LSU.
At most places, 10 and 9 wins in your first 3 years, people are okay with that. At LSU, where the 3 previous coaches won national titles, it's not okay. It's not enough, and that's where Brian Kelly finds himself under pressure, because another 9, like he goes 9 again this season, or even like if you go 10, if you're 10-2 in the regular season, you make the playoff, that's probably fine. But if you're 9-3 and you miss the playoff again, where are they on you?
I thought they were. I did a bad job, I guess. We had T-Bob Abear on the show, and he kind of walked me off the ledge. But I thought LSU fans were fed up already last year.
They weren't. Yeah, they were. They were a little more even keeled than you usually expect LSU fans to be.
You know the movie Step Brothers, when they have the scene with the tuxedos, and then one, I don't remember whether it was Dale or Brennan, lets out a fart.
Yeah,
and then Seth Rogen goes, "I can taste it. Is that onions and ketchup?" He goes, "Now that you mention it, those tuxedos. No, after that, now those tuxedos will seem a little messed up." And the reason why I bring that up is because it's like, after this past season, now the previous season where they blew one of the best offenses of all time seems a little bit more messed up.
Yeah, it's funny, the immediate anger of that. I almost think you needed to see Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. do it in the NFL.
Why?
To really to really drive home the point that having the worst defense in LSU history wasted an incredible, like, remember the 2019 LSU offense? We're like, they'll never have an offense that good again. Nobody will ever have an offense that good again. They actually might have had an offense that good again 4 years later.
Like, I would criticize them, but they're not the only team that blew talent like that.
Right.
It's like Ohio State had
it's
CJ Stroud and Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison all at once, and they didn't win anything either. So it happens. But like at LSU,
but at least they made the 14 playoff.
Yeah, they made the playoff. Yeah, and like I likability was part of my thought process too. Like, I don't know.
I'm not worried about likability if you're winning.
Likability,
like if Brian Kelly's winning national titles, it does not matter how likable.
But I also
is.
think that if you're not winning, your likability makes it harder for you to get back on track.
Well, I think the LSU job in particular, Alabama's like this, Ohio State's like this. I think Brent Venables is going to find out Oklahoma's like this. You better meet a certain standard quickly.
LSU is a hard job. It's an incredibly difficult job, but it also, with the right person, is easy.
Well, right.
Is that crazy?
No, because we don't look at Les Miles. Like, now, knowing all we know about Les Miles, it's like, oh, how'd that guy win a national title? Oh, because
he was there.
Because the blueprint at LSU makes it easier to do that.
I feel like the hardest part about coaching is going to a place, creating a blueprint, having a clear and identifiable plan, and then following it.
Yeah, Nick Saban created the blueprint for LSU 20 years ago. All you got to do is follow it.
And like, yes. So I don't know what the expectations are. Like, Garrett Nussmeier is going to be really, really good this year.
He's going to be good.
So,
I like what they did in the transfer portal. They attacked it much more aggressively. It feels like they've improved the talent on defense, which they absolutely had to do, because they improved the coaching on defense last year, but they didn't really improve the roster defensively. So they got a little bit better. I think they've improved the roster some now, but the problem is...
And then the hope is that Harold Perkins comes back and is who he is.
Yeah. But you lose Will Campbell and Emory Jones on the offensive line. and Garrett Dellinger on the offensive line. Like it's still not an easy replacement of the talent they lost.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. Brian Kelly being ranked number 16 is still a pretty nice place to be ranked. Like, I think we lose track, too. It's
But
like,
the
oh,
thing
he's
is,
not number 8. Number
right,
16 is pretty good.
But I think, let's say he wins 9 games again this year, he's dropping on both our lists, and LSU fans are pitchforks and torches.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't know if they go 8-4. Is he their coach next year? The following year?
That's a good question.
That's a discussion.
I was worried about them after the Florida game. They bounced back nicely and beat Vanderbilt and beat Oklahoma and then won the bowl game. So they finished the season strong. And
they're probably going to lose their opener again. Just so you know,
it's not on a Sunday this time for once.
I think they're like 0-4 or 5.
Yeah, it's not on a Sunday this time though, because they've lost the last 3 those Sunday neutral site openers.
Haven't they lost their last 5 openers?
They have, and so they go to Clemson. And that's not going to be easy. I have Dabo very high on this list because I think Dabo is actually coming back. Like, he's starting to do the things you have to do in this era.
Okay.
Because revenue share.
Dabo. Can we talk about it?
Yeah, we'll wrap up the show with Dabo because you have him lower than I do. I've been very critical of Dabo throughout the
Still
transfer
have him very
portal
high
era.
on mine.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I've been very critical of him throughout the transfer portal era, but I feel like I understood what he was saying last year when he was explaining why they weren't using it as much. Because it was his gentle way of saying Clemson didn't have enough money in the collective system to afford the players who could help them, like who would be better than the players they already have, who wouldn't cost so much that it would upset their pay scale for the players that they had retained. So there was a delicate balance they had to achieve there. Now with revenue share, there's some more money and they can afford some people. And I think that's going to allow them to take transfers a little more often. They're still not going to take transfers a lot because they like their culture. They like recruiting guys out of high school. And what did we say at the beginning of the show? What's the most important thing still?
Recruiting.
Out of high school and developing them. Guess who's really good at that?
Dabo.
Okay,
so I don't know if I wasn't out on 3 yet, but I made a huge storm last summer. Like Paul Feinbaum's head was going to explode. But I put Dabo Swinney on my Mount Rushmore of coaches.
Oh, wow. So like top 4 all time?
Yes.
Or top 4 currently working?
I think it was, I think the Mount Rushmore was of like the modern era.
Okay.
I don't know.
So you're talking about this includes Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Pete Carroll at USC. Like, yeah.
It might have even been back to 1980. I can't remember.
Okay.
But the reason why Dabo has frustrated the hell out of me the last few years, because I feel like he was doing his team a disservice by not getting the best players to play for him, regardless of however he wanted to package that. I thought it was bad. But Dabo is the only active coach in college football for the past 25, 30 years who has done this one thing, which is turning a good program into a juggernaut.
Yes.
That is like, you want to talk about program building.
And I would argue that Clemson wasn't even a good program when he got the job. It was a middling program.
He turned them into a team that could stand at the same spot or sit at the same table as Georgia and Alabama and belong there.
And no one else has done that. Dan Lanning is working on that, although I would argue that Chip Kelly and Mike Bellotti had something to do with that at Oregon as well. Dabo did this himself at Clemson.
And like from that aspect, I think you could even make him number 1. Like if you really wanted to make him number 1.
Yeah.
Because I have,
but I worried about him, and the reason we dinged him is would he be able to adapt to this era of college football? His public statements over the years suggested it was going to be very tough. But now I'm looking at him, and it's like, ooh, okay. I think he's found the groove personnel wise. The other part I worried about was the program being too insular. Now he did when Chad Morris left as the offensive coordinator, he promotes Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott. That worked. They won 2 national titles with those guys as the co-OCs. When Venables left, he promotes Wes Goodwin. That did not work. And so they also, when Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott left, they promoted Brandon Streeter. That didn't work either. So he's now fired coaches that were probably mistakes to promote to coordinators. So he fires Wes Goodwin this offseason. He brings in Tom Allen. Like bringing in new ideas to a program that already has a lot of good ideas. I think that's important. And what was the single biggest kind of rocket fuel propulsion of Clemson's program from very good to elite? It was when they brought Brent Venables into the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have time, but that's part of the reason why he's on my list still. I'm sorry.
Why Venables is?
Yeah.
I don't hate you.
Yeah.
Look, Venables,
that was the number one.
Venables
criticism.
can coach his way onto my list this year too. He's just got to get it done. He's got to win in the way that Oklahoma expects him to win.
But I think that there is like this notion, especially from Clemson fans, Andy, that like I have like a distaste for Dabo, and like I think that you guys should know that like I've got a deep respect for what he's done there.
Yeah.
I can criticize the way things have gone the last few years. And like, I always bring this up, but the first time I was ever on your show, and I was just an Ohio State beat writer, I was like, the beginning of the end is happening at Clemson. It was in 2019 or 18. And everybody went berserk. I don't know if you remember. I think that's when you were like, we have to have this guy on the show more often.
That's right.
People get
he
fired
pisses
up.
people off.
But that was when it was easier to read the tea leaves. They weren't recruiting at the same level, and the transfer portal hadn't happened yet. Now, like Clemson still, their brilliance was never amassing Alabama, Georgia-like talent at once.
No,
it was getting top-end quarterbacks and then marrying them with really good evaluation jobs of guys like Isaiah Simmons and three-star
but they also got Christian Wilkins. Like they
but
also
it was never 12 top 100 players in the single class.
Right. But they were really good when they targeted somebody
but
at getting him and that person being a hit. Like you didn't see a lot of 5-star signees from Clemson wash out.
The problem with Clemson was that they had a 4-year run where they won 2 national titles and were the number 1 team in the country in the other 2 years, I believe.
Yeah.
And sustaining that on a year-over-year was just not a tenable thing when they weren't recruiting the way that Alabama was recruiting.
Right. And also they don't have the resources that the biggest SEC schools have. They do have a passionate fan base. They have an administration that cares deeply about football, but it's harder when you are a fairly small school with a fairly small alumni base in the ACC. Like what they've done is pretty remarkable.
And I think that you could make the legitimate case that of all the coaches on both of our lists, that Dabo Swinney has the most impressive resume.
Yes. I don't think there's any question about that.
And that's why he's number 6 on mine.
He's number 3 on mine. And I would have had him lower. If I had done this last year, I would have had him lower because I was not sure last year, this time, if he was ever going to come around on the portal. Now I understand. He gave an interview with Roddy Jones last May. I was like standing 6 feet away when he was saying it. I was listening to everything. It made perfect sense. Like once I understood that,
but the question,
it all made more sense.
The question with him always too is that like this year we both have Clemson as a very good team. That
I think they're going to win the ACC. Yeah, I think they're going to be really good.
They were an okay team last year and they still won the ACC.
Right.
I think them winning the ACC is a pretty good bet. But will they be able to match up with Oregon and Georgia and Ohio State and those teams at the end of the year by doing what they're doing? I still have questions about that. That said, you dip your toe in, you get more acclimated to the way you do it, then you realize, I mean, he knows that he needs to keep winning.
Well, and they're also going to test themselves against teams that theoretically should have the playoff type talent. They start and end the season against teams we think have playoff type talent in LSU and South Carolina.
South Carolina we're high on too. So do you want to just 2 minutes on omissions on my list that I can just do time?
Yeah, go ahead.
3 coaches that I feel bad didn't make my list. Shane Beamer.
Mm-hmm. Who also didn't make mine, but it was close.
So be ready for that. You're going to get a lot of like South Carolina fans came pretty hard. Rhett Lashley was somebody that I think could have been on my list that wasn't.
Yeah.
And you know, we're talking about a guy that led SMU to the playoff in year one of his existence at a program, or year one at
the ACC.
In the ACC is what I'm trying to say. So that one was pretty tough, and I'm trying to remember who the third.
I'll give you one off of mine that you had on your list. I didn't have in mind. Kalani Sitake from BYU.
Yeah, no,
I think that may have been a bad omission on my part.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe BYU will go crazy, but like, and sometimes too, it's like the loudest people are the ones that feel the biggest fan bases. But I got a lot of crap for having Kurt Cignetti in the top 15, which I thought was interesting, and you're going to get that too.
Yeah, I had him number 12.
People also thought that Mario Cristobal at number 11 was too high.
Yeah, I had him at number 22. My thing is, he gives you like he gives you a really high floor because you're always going to have good line of scrimmage play with him. He's got to show he can take it to the next level.
Yeah. But the Shane Beamer, what he's doing at South Carolina, I think is
I just need to see it consistently. I need to see it year over year. And I don't know that that's a Shane Beamer knock. That may be a South Carolina thing, because the problem is, like, South Carolina with Shane Beamer, like they had that situation with Muschamp early too, where he had the good year and then the dip, and then so I need to see it consistently. And let's be real, only one person's actually been able to do it consistently at South Carolina. That's Steve Spurrier.
Yeah.
So it's not that easy.
Your list is almost like you read the comments on who people were mad at me for.
And I really didn't, because my bracket came out early this week, so I was staying off.
Because
staying off the comments.
Your last two are also ones that I didn't have on my list that people got mad about. Jeff Brom.
Yep.
I didn't have. I think that you could make a case that there was some that he should have been on there. And then Eli Drinkwitz.
Mm-hmm.
I had a hard time. I had Eli. I'm going to tell you, I had him at number 24.
Uh-huh.
And then when I was writing his blurb, I was having a hard time, so I dropped.
I'll tell you why. Missouri's a really hard job. And I actually wrote this in the blurb about Eli, is I spent probably 5 to 10 years saying we didn't appreciate Gary Pinkel enough. And it's a hard place to win, Missouri. It's an even harder place to win with Missouri in the SEC. Eli's made them really competitive.
Yeah.
Really competitive. And you can say they had an easy schedule last year. That's fine. But he's getting top end talent there. He's winning games at a really impressive clip. So,
and Chris Kleiman too, Andy. I didn't have him.
I had Chris Kleiman, and a lot of that, Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold, the jobs they're doing now, but also you do have to give them, as we talked about, give them their flowers for winning national titles at another level.
But also, if this list was top 30, those would be the next 5. So, it's just it's really hard. And if you would have,
Jeff Munkin just missed mine, the Army coach. I think he's fantastic. I think he's done a really good job. And people forget how bad they were when he got there, and he's made them year in, year out good. They won the freaking American Conference last year.
Yeah. But this was fun. Check out the lists that we had. We both gave our rationale on them. And you know what? If you're mad, that's fine. Do a list and post it and see how it goes for you. There's no right answer.
I probably won't be commenting under your list. So
yeah,
just fair warning.
But it was fun, and we could have had. Next week if we hit a lull, we can hit back on this too. I still think there's a lot of meat on this bone because we didn't talk at all about Josh Heupel, Mario Cristobal,
Kalen
DeBoer. I think we should do another segment on this.
Why not
later?
Let's do it Monday.
And then also Kirk Ferentz and Matt Campbell and guys on here, Lance Leipold, because they didn't have a great year this year. And we both had them on our lists, I think, right? You did too.
Oh, yeah, because we understand how hard it is to win a game at Kansas, much less multiple games at Kansas.
Super excited to be in New Orleans. I'm super excited to see those Caesars lights pop on here in a little bit. And we're going to get some dinner. I'm not going to eat any reptiles tonight, unfortunately, but
he doesn't know what he's going to eat. And I'm probably not going to tell him until after he eats it. So
what is it? Some weird Banana Land shit that you're taking me to?
I mean, I'm just going to go with the flow. We'll see.
I will tell you.
See where the night takes us.
I will tell you. Of all the cities we could be in where I could be scared of what you have in for us, this is the scariest city that there is, right? For me personally. So
Ari, I'm taking you for a sandwich tonight.
Okay.
It's just a sandwich.
Okay. Well, I mean,
you're going to like it.
It's going to be lizard sandwich, though, or something, and I'm just not going to.
I don't believe there are any reptiles on this particular sandwich. So,
okay.
We will talk to you tomorrow from New Orleans. It'll be a fun show. Xfinity, Athletes First, building out an incredible studio space. We cannot wait to get there, and we're going to have a very, very fun Friday show as we get you prepared for that last football game of the whole season. Before the long offseason begins. But don't worry. We got more coach ranking segments. We got more win totals. The season never ends at On 3. We'll talk to you tomorrow.